Hi and welcome back to the next lesson in our course. This one is going to cover your photography workflow and it's essentially all about time is money. I did say this course is not a photography course, right? But I did want to cover a little bit about workflow because it is important to ensure you've got time within your business to get things done. Editing weddings, it takes up a lot of time, and if you don't get your workflow right, then you'll never get time to actually do the kind of marketing, the sales and marketing work you need to grow your business. So, best practice workflow, let's talk about that for a bit. Best practice workflow is key to managing your business efficiently. You need time to run your business and need time for creative thinking. You should spend 80% of your time on business, 20% on photography. Now I know for some of you that might appear strange. Some might say, oh, shouldn't it be the other way around? But trust me, it should be 80% business, 20% photography. I call that the 80-20 rule. You've probably heard that it's called Pareto's principle. It's got a famous thing about the time it takes you to do the last 20% of something to get it perfect. Will take you 80% of the time. That actually meant. Hope that makes sense. So 80% of the time in business, 20% of the time in photography. Invest in the fastest computer you can afford. The new M1 Max are amazing, and the new ones they just released recently, the new Mac Studio, are phenomenal. The faster you can get your computer, the process, editing, exporting stuff, so much the better. Lightroom can be, we use Lightroom in our business, and Lightroom can be quite a heavy product. And every time Adobe releases an update, sometimes it slows things down again, and it can be a bit of a pain. So always invest in the fastest computer you can afford. Use solid state SSD drives for the fastest speed of file handling. What that is, SSD is basically, rather than your hard drive being a physical spinning device, SSD is solid state, where it's basically just like huge memory chips, and the computer can read and write to them extremely fast, where a traditional hard drive, these disks are spinning, the little head has to move back and forward, and that takes time. Obviously hard drives are fast, but an SSD drive is much, much faster. Invest in a fast card reader to get your images off your camera. I read of people trying to download images using Lightroom directly from the camera, things like that. That takes time. Quickest way to just get this done: get a card out your camera, stick it in a fast card reader, copy them onto your computer. SanDisk and Lexar both manufacture high-speed units and get the fastest card reader you can afford. Don't forget a robust backup system. Your backups are crucial, especially in the wedding game. You can't go back and do something again in a wedding. Portraits, if you ever had an emergency like that in portraits, you could recover, but if you ever lose anything at a wedding, you are finished. So you've got to have a completely robust backup system. I came from an IT background, so I was familiar with this kind of stuff. We used to focus on disaster recovery and what would happen if any particular things happen in the business. So this was obviously crucial to me as well. Never ever delete the contents of a card, for example, until your images have actually been viewed, you've checked them, you've culled them, and you've actually got them in 3 separate locations, right? And rotate things. You have a live disk. You have a local backup disk, and you also have an off-site backup, right? There's no point in having a backup on-site if there's a fire in your building, your computer goes up, your hard drives goes up, or your cards end up in the fire. If you don't have a backup, it's actually physically off that site, you are screwed. So, and be careful with off-site backup. A lot of people use what we term cloud backup. Problem with cloud backup is they're great in practice. Sometimes they can, if you delete something accidentally, your cloud backup can sometimes synchronize that deletion to your backup without you knowing about it, and before so you've now not only deleted something accidentally, you've deleted it in your backup system as well. So be careful with cloud backup systems. The other thing with cloud backup systems is they take an age to restore. If you've got gigabytes of stuff up in the cloud and you have to get it all back very, very quickly, it's going to take you a long time, so be careful with it. Rotate your backups so you never overwrite your most recent data, right? Set yourself a 14 to 21 day target for completion of weddings. And this helps actually with your backup system. If you're getting things done quickly, you can actually afford to have enough cards so you don't actually have to overwrite that card because you've done the wedding in about 3 weeks' time. So you can actually keep that card to one side, note you've finished the wedding, you've got it edited and it's completely done. Then you can overwrite that original card, right? I used to have half a dozen cards and just rotated them, and I labelled them all A, B, C, D, E, and just didn't use them in rotation. Always knew exactly what was on those cards, and always check them before you overwrite them. As I said, 14 to 21 day target for completion of your weddings. That's an important thing to try and achieve. Again, I hear of wedding photographers taking 6, 8, 10 weeks to deliver wedding photographs back to a couple. I just don't get that. Just get the job done, under promise and over deliver. Have the photographs ready for them coming back from their honeymoon. I'll go through the steps in our basic workflow. Step 1 for us was essentially slowing down, shooting less. If you've got 3,000-4,000 images from a wedding to edit, that's going to take you a while to go through that, cull them down, narrow it down to say 300 images for 4,000 to 300. That takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. So try and slow down and shoot less, right? Try to get below 1,200 shots in a wedding, right? You're not shooting a stop motion video here. You're not click, 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 click. Actually do the math, sit and say, how many hours is it this wedding? Say a 6-hour wedding, 8-hour wedding. How many images have I taken? Divide that, take out the time that you're sitting down when they're having a dinner, having something to eat, all the downtime in the day, and work out how many shots you've taken per minute. And I think you might be surprised. So you're not shooting a stop motion video here. Slow down and shoot less. Once we have the images done on the card, we'll bring them back. We need to cull the images, narrow them down, obviously. The fastest software I've found for doing that is a piece of software called Photo Mechanic. It's widely used by photojournalists because of its speed. Now, I never touched the sides of what that product can do. Literally, I just used it to go select, delete, select, delete, and it's so quick at moving through images. I mean, it just goes fast as anything through images. So I highly recommend it. The website is camerabits.com. And it's $139, and it'll probably be the best $139 you'll spend, trust me. Much faster than Lightroom for doing culling. Once you've done your culling, I then imported my images into Lightroom Classic, and that was to do the exposure, white balance correction, and color styling and processing, right? Now, I recommend you outsource that particular step, because this is a bit that for me, I found I would procrastinate. I would sit in front of the computer going through the images and saying, right, I need to correct my exposure, it's maybe slightly off, the white balance slightly off, want to do my cropping, then apply my... I just found that I took ages doing that. I would sit and be working at it, and next thing I'd find myself on Facebook, or I'd be reading the news, or I just found that I personally was not good at doing that. It's fast, right? And if you're the same, outsource it. You can outsource this step for pennies nowadays, right? We used to use a guy, Eduardo his name was, from Round Colour. Cost me at the time about €80 a wedding, and I thought that was money well spent. And nowadays you can actually get it done for less than that. So I highly recommend you do it. It'll save you a ton of time. And when it comes to photoshopping, we only fine-tuned and photoshopped the couple portraits. Nothing else in the wedding. Everything else was done. Once you've done the basic white balance correction, cropped exposure, that's a nice image. It's finished, right? So we only fine-tuned and photoshopped the couple's portraits. In terms of my actual workflow, we would say we'd take between 800 to 1,200 images. We'd get that down to 375. we would tag those selects in PhotoMechanic. We then export those to a new folder. So we'd have a folder of those 375. So think of your backups again. I've not deleted anything. I've still got my original 1200 images. I've copied them elsewhere to my selects, say 350, say. I then imported in Lightroom. I created a collection set in Lightroom with a date and the couple's name. Then underneath that set, I'll create a sub-collection called Wedding Selects, and that's where all those images were imported into that thing. So I've got a collection set and then a sub-collection beneath that called Wedding Selects. At that point, that was when I would export these as smart previews to my outsourcing editor, right? So where you do something like that, the same, he would then send them back in a couple of days, and I'd just re-import the smart previews, and suddenly, bang, they're all in there, nicely edited. So assume your images are cleaned for exposure and white balance by your outsourcer. You can go further. You can actually get your outsourcer to color images if you want. I used to do the crops myself, because I think a crop is part of a creative process, and I prefer to keep the creativity in that. I was okay to hand over exposure and white balance to him, but I like to keep that side of things. But again, you can outsource that if you wish. Some outsourcers worth mentioning: Shoot.edit, a company who actually use genuine people do the editing. Imagen-AI is apparently an AI-based version of editing, and I've seen some of the results for this, and it's astounding, and it's so cheap. So I'd definitely suggest you have a look at that. There'll be a link in the notes below this course for these companies. And the company I use, the chap called Round Colour, who's still around. He won't be the cheapest, but he did a great service, I must admit. So I imported these smart previews back into Lightroom, and then I did my cropping. And then what I would do then, I would use the color tag facility in Lightroom, ready for doing a batch process on my images. And this was a batch process in Photoshop. Now I said I don't use Photoshop, I only use Photoshop for the couples portraits. But we did do the actual it's kind of assigning the color profile, the actual styling on a photograph was done in Photoshop, right? And we used the piece of software, which I'll tell you in a minute. So we marked them for what we call colored standard. Then we had color with some skin smoothing it was required. So typically, if it was close-up images of anybody, or if they were particularly close-up images of anybody, or group shots, we would do a tiny little bit of skin smoothing in that, just taking away any, it was very subtle. Nobody would look at it and say, oh my god, I've been smoothed. You just couldn't see it, but they look better. We then also mark any images we want to be black and white, so we were tagged BW standard, black and white standard, and that was for candidates or any particular areas where we had poor lighting and it would look better in black and white. Sometimes you get that if you've got mixed lighting. Tagging anything with black and white that also needed skin smoothing, again close-ups, poor lighting. And then the last ones we would tag as fix, and these are the ones that would be manual Photoshop edits, so typically the bridal portraits, or where an image I just 100% had to get rid of something in the background, which was very rare. Typically we always just the manual Photoshop edits for us was down to bridal portraits. I'd export these as TIFFs, ready for batching through Photoshop. I would then batch process using Photoshop, and would run an action in the batch, and the action would assign a colour style using Alien Skin Exposure, which was the software we used. And for our colour images, we used a film profile called the Kodak Porta. Kodak Porta was an old portrait type film emulsion from the 70s, 80s, and I love it. We used Kodak Porta VC150 for the colour styling. For our black and white images, we used Kodak Plus X, another old Kodak film. Kodak Plus X 125 for black and white images. It also put a little bit of grain back in images and made them look a bit more analogy rather than digital. For the skin smoothing I mentioned in images, we use a piece of software called a Portraiture from a company called Imaginomic. this is great because it can do batched process skin smoothing. You don't have to go in and tell the software where the skin is. It can recognize skin in an image, and you can dial the smoothing back to be very, very subtle. And we just ran our group shots, all the couple portraits all went through that skin smoothing. And you can create an action for standard skin smoothing, or if you wanted a slightly higher medium skin smoothing, depending on the subject, you could do that. And that's why we use these color tags in Lightroom. To do this batch processing in Photoshop, it's under the File menu, Automate Batch, and you assign an action to this batch that you're going to run. You choose the folder you're going to run it from. So we've exported all these color tags into different folders, right? I've then got different actions depending on these folders. So I had an action for color standard, an action for color smoothing, black and white standard, and black and white smoothing. And those actions basically just said, for the standard one, it just said run alien exposure and assign VC 150. And you can record that action in Photoshop. So the first time you go into exposure, run it on an image, and you can record that action and save it as an action. Similarly, for my smoothing one, it would have two steps. It would run, add the exposure, alien exposure for the color styling, and then run the portraiture plugin to do the skin smoothing. And then in your destination on the File Automate Batch process, you set it to save and close. So it'll run the action, save the image, close it, next image, run the action, save and close. So it'll just run automatically through. So you're running this through 300 and odd images would take 5 minutes, right? Fast as anything. For the bridal portraits, they would be in this folder we call the Fix folder. These are ones that we tagged in Photoshop where I knew I need to do some manual Photoshop work in this. And this was for us, it was the bridal portraits, the couple portraits. Again, using Alien Skin Exposure. The software version nowadays is Alien Skin Exposure X7, and I think actually the company might have dropped the name Alien Skin. I'll put a note down below giving you the links to these. For the background, we used to use a product called Topaz Labs Clarity. At 80%, this used to enhance the background first of all, so we'd kind of pull some detail out the background first of all. I would then mask out the bride and groom from that, so their clothing, the dress, faces, and that none of that clarity work happened on their skin. So you just run a mask on it and wipe that back off. Again, remember, this is not a Photoshop course, so some of you may say, but how do I do that? Well, you have to learn Photoshop, and this is not a Photoshop course. I'm just running through how my profile works. If you need any particular help, then just drop me an email and I'll try and help any way I can. For certain bits of colour correction and maybe lifting, dodging and burning some areas, I used a product called Nik Viveza in the Nik collection. This software it's magic, right? It's absolutely magic how it works. It uses a concept of control points where you say, right, in this part of the image where the colours are a bit green, I'm going to drop a pointer, a control point in this green area, and you then see how much, you then draw a kind of circumference around how much the image is going to be affected where it's got those green tones. And you can then lift and you can drop the exposure, increase the exposure, you can increase the clarity there, you can increase the saturation. It was so good and stuff like that. And you could actually, if you wish, then even change colours. It was just a wonderful product. We used it a lot, and anytime I had trees in an image, it was great for just if you want to bring out the tones in the trees or the leaves. If the leaves were maybe, it wasn't quite autumn yet, the leaves weren't quite that kind of lovely golden brown colour, this product could make them golden brown. It was great for that. And then we then did another Topaz, this thing called Topaz Simplicity. And that product doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but the Topaz Labs still have a piece of software called Topaz Studio, and I'm sure the functionality is probably in there. They might just need a little bit of research to make it work. But what this Simplicity product did, it would take, remember, boosted all the clarity in the background first of all, so we really could pull out all the detail, and then we did this what called like a painterly watercolour effect, and it was gorgeous, and that was our kind of style, and people, you could see it in the image. Some photographers will look at it and say, oh my god, you've over processed it. I don't care, that's what I liked. It was our images, our brides loved it, so that's what we did. Use the effect about 60%, not overdo it, and again we would mask the bride and groom out so they would stand out from image with this kind of watercolour painting behind them, if you like. Obviously, any dodge burning areas, clone, liquefy, you know, maybe want to take a couple of pounds off the groom or whatever, watch for double chins, just like that, we would do that kind of work. Just always keep it real, don't overdo it, because if you overdo it, people will say, oh my god, you can see you photoshopped me to death, and I don't want that. We added a little subtle vignette at the end of the images, and very last step we did was, again in the Nik Collection Colour Efex Pro, we just ran a tonal contrast on the image, and it just gives it a little punch, and it just, you can see again the difference when you run, you go, oh, that looks great now. Then if any at that point I felt might be better in black and white, I would create a new black and white layer, and I always saved my images with all the layers. So if for any reason I delivered an image to the bride, it was in black and white, and later on when we're doing the album, I felt, oh no, I need an image here, but I need it to be colour. I can just go back in and switch that black and white layer off, so I've got a colour version, right? And sometimes you might find a bride and groom who they prefer all colour images, particularly in the couple's portraits. So that's why I always keep it an option if you need to take it back again. You've not wiped out your colour process, and you've still got it there in the layers. Remember, these images are your USP, so this is a bit to spend the time on. These couple portraits, that's the images that people look at and study, so make sure you put quite a bit of effort into them. Final part of that workflow, so I've done all those batch processings, I've done my manual Photoshop, so they're sitting in a bunch of folders called, remember, colour standard, colour smooth, black and white standard, black and white smooth, and then fix. So I've got 5 folders, and then pull these back into Lightroom, basically move them all back at that point into a sub-collection called Wedding Final Edits. So remember, I've got my collection set for the bride, the actual wedding itself. I've got a sub-collection called Wedding Selects, and I'm now going to have a sub-collection under that called Wedding Final Edits. So my final edit batch of images are separate now from my selects, right? So again, it's down to backups. I'm not overwriting anything. Everything that's, I can always go back and re-edit from scratch if I ever needed to. I then sit down and sort images into the correct order. I sort images into basically a timeline order, so the order of the day, because if I'm working, my wife did second shooting for me, so the stuff's coming in from a different camera at the time, might be different on the 2 cameras, so her images might be slightly out of sync with mine, so just getting everything in the right order. And I'm not going to have, if I'm shooting a bridal prep and my wife's doing groom prep in the same building, those images are not going to be mixed together. We'll have a set running together of the bride getting ready and a set of the groom getting ready, or vice versa. So we just sort it in the correct order. And then at that point, very important, I renumber all the images, right? So my file naming convention, you can do it in Lightroom. It has a setting for this where you can give it a prefix. So the prefix would be the couple's name, dash, and then a 3-digit number, right? And it's that 001, 02, 03, etc. And if I renumber everything, it means there's no gaps in the numbering. Because remember, when you import all your 1200 images and you get rid of all your rubbish ones and you're left with 350, there's going to be gaps in those numbers. And if you deliver those numbers to the bride and groom, they're going to say, what happened to numbers 20 to 33? They're missing. So don't let them think there's more images, because when they said to me, is there any more? It's not, this is your set of images, this is the final set. There are no more. And if they ever question that, I would say, I'd delete them in camera as I'm working. If an image isn't right, I just delete it in the camera. No, we don't actually do that. But as far as they're ever concerned, that's what happened. So I don't want them ever questioning, are there more images available? Because the young entitled generation, they're used to hundreds of images of things, and if you offered to give them 1,000, they would take 1,000 thinking they're getting a better product, but they're not getting a better product. By culling your images down, narrowing it down to about 300 or 400, you are giving them a much better product than you would be giving them if you were giving them thousands. Okay. We always did a slideshow as part of our wedding package. So we'd export images in HD format for that slideshow, or 4K if you want to do it in 4K. And then we'd export a set in high-res JPEGs and a set of low-res JPEGs, which the couple could use if they wanted to upload to Facebook. The low-res JPEGs, we would put our branding in the corner of the image. So if they were sharing them amongst friends, our branding's on those images. For slideshow, we used a product called PhotoMagico with a slight Ken Burns style effect on the images as they're changing. It was a nice slideshow. You could do some nice editing on it. Very easy to use, set up. You just import images, and I could have the slideshow done in 10 minutes. Animoto is another one. Animoto used to have a limitation on the number of images you could put in a slideshow. I think they might have fixed that now, so it might be worth taking a little look at Animoto.com. Their slideshows are a bit more animated than PhotoMagico would be by standard, so it just depends on the style they want. We wanted just a nice subtle, images fading in and out kind of slideshow, nothing too fancy. So that is my kind of workflow. Again, it's not a photography course. I'm not teaching you Photoshop here, and this course is all about business, about marketing. This workflow thing, though, is an important part of your business because it's your time, and time is money. The slicker you can get that workflow down to, the better. You'll have more time in your business to do other things, right? And be creative and spend time on your marketing and grow your business quicker. You don't want to be bogged down constantly editing weddings where you can't get anything else done. And the next thing you know, you're delivering weddings late and stuff like that. So focus on, get that wedding done, so at the time the couple come back from their honeymoon, you've got that stuff ready, and you can phone them the day after they land from the plane and say, I've got your photographs ready to let you see them, and I can't wait to share them with you. All right. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you in the next lesson.